Hey, it's James and Michael with the Crypto Guys, and people are freaking out about something that has to do with Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about that today. Also, why Bitcoin is oversold. So, and what you need to do about that. So, make sure that you watch this video right to the very end and subscribe to the channel. So, Michael, let's dive in, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but let's continue on.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing people need to understand is that we are in accumulation zone, which is why I've been recommending on this channel to basically accumulate Bitcoin. And this is the Stoke RSI. And I definitely want to talk about that today. So I'll come back and talk about that. I also want to mention some other things that I prepared for you guys to understand. And we're going to explain these different levels. Which I said that when we're below 10%, we're in a correction. So now we're 14.55% below. We are potentially seeing a double bottom, which I will explain what that is. And I'll come back to that. So let's jump into this ideal that Stoke RSI and the accumulation zone. Now, simply put, right, anytime you're below the 20 range, which is right here, you're in oversold. That means people panic. And out of fear, they are selling it to. Now, if they're selling it to, I think it's very important to explain, who are they selling it to? Who's going to buy it, right? Like if I'm selling my Bitcoin right now, who's going to buy it? And I'll tell you exactly who's going to buy it. They're called market makers. Now, market makers are people that hope people will sell their Bitcoin at a lower price, right? Like because they are planning to buy it. Now, these market makers, if they could, if it's possible, they would like to push Bitcoin all the way down to 20,000. Now, how would they do that? Well, by making people panic, right? So that's what market makers want. They always want to push it down and then they buy it. When do they buy it? They buy it when it's oversold. Now, because they're more experienced traders, they understand that it's not a bad time to buy, and they completely ignore what the news are, okay, until they're in like profit. And you can see that if we look at Stoke RSI, we're already in this accumulation zone. We've been there for a while, right? While I've been telling people to buy. And what they do is they just wait. Wait for what, right? Well, they just wait for it to go up to the overbuying like zone. So there's an oversold zone, but overbuying zone is over 80. And by the way, this is a weekly view on the candles. So we're looking at the weekly candles right here, right? So each candle is 1 week, and we're using Stoke RSI to see when to buy, when to sell. Now, the selling part is always harder than the buying part because it often will do this, right? Just like it did here. It will continue to grow. And you can see that it was a huge pump even after this part here. So I think that's why we use more than one tool. But I will tell you one thing, it's very safe like strategy right now to buy. Like you cannot go wrong. Like if you go back in last time it went there was right here, right? So you can see that this is where it was. We were in the accumulation zone right here, right? The whole time. So if you had bought pretty much at any time here, right? When it reached the like bottom and you just hold it till the top, you're going to make a lot of like money. Yeah. And by the way, we could go back in time and see that over and over, of course, this one, right? But even prior to that. Now you might look at this and say, oh, this doesn't look like a big gain. Well, let's zoom in a little bit, right? Because it may not look big, but if you are measuring it, right, to the top, let's say, or to the next candle up, it's 158% just to here, right? Which is above the bull market like support band. So you would never, you should never sell below the bull market support band, yeah? So I think that's really important to understand. So when you accumulate, you never want to sell it, you know, below the bull market like support band, always above, right? And so because below the bull market support band, let me just show you right and tell you here. If you go here, and that's the bull market support band, the green and red line here, right? So you wouldn't sell below that. You wouldn't buy here and sell it below. It just doesn't make sense. So instead, what you want to do is you want to wait until you reach kind of a peak, right? And so there are many ways to identify what the peak is. And obviously it's not when the peak was until here. So if you had held from, let's say here and held till the peak, that's 1,444%. So just to give you a clue, that's 14x on your like money. So if you put $1,000, you would get back 14,000, right? So now we'll be using other tools to identify what the peak. Right now, I don't want you to use Stoke RSI to know where the peak is because it's not a tool to do that. but it's certainly a tool to buy the dip, okay, especially a correction. So that's why I want to start by mentioning that we are in an accumulation zone. If you've not been buying, then you're certainly not following my strategy. Of course, this is not financial advice, and I'll give you some other clues here that are really important. For example, right, I'm not claiming with absolute certainty that Bitcoin is going to pump to all-time high, beat the all-time high, get to 100,000. I'm not claiming that. A lot of people are saying it's going to be very volatile in the next little while. I agree. What I am saying is I personally buying Bitcoin. Okay. So just so we're clear. But I'm also keeping 20% of my total cash in case that I'm wrong. And I don't think I am wrong, but if I am wrong, then I want cash in case that I am. Because if we ever go to the 200-week moving average, which is our worst case scenario, and that's going up every day, by the way, right? But if I ever am wrong, I certainly want to have cash to buy that, because that would bring Bitcoin to 20,000 if I was wrong. So by the way, this is not like I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm basically saying that 80% of my money I'm starting to accumulate here. Now, I do have orders at a lower price. That's true. So I'm not 80% in, but I'm saying, like, if that was to drop, let's say like to this level right here, then I'm 80% in. Okay. And then if it keeps dropping, then the other 20% is not till the 20,000. So does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, this reminds me of garage sales. If when you talk about market makers, there are people that come around to garage sales in the morning because the prices are highest at the garage sale, and at the end of the day, they're the lowest. But even when they're at their highest, it's a garage sale. It is way cheaper than it will ever be. And this reminds me of Bitcoin right now. It's a garage sale. Would we maybe go lower prices at the end of the day? Yeah, that's always possible. But even right now, it's a garage sale.
Now, by the way, we should mention, like, how could it go like lower when it's already at the accumulation zone? Well, because we're still vulnerable. When people are afraid, all you need is one big bad news or a whale dumping their Bitcoin, and that will bring it down. Like if one of the whales says, you know what, I want it to be at 20, it wouldn't help them because they wouldn't be able to buy it because it would never stay there more than 24 hours. But they could bring it down to like 20, and they may be able to buy it at 25 or something like that. They wouldn't get it at 20. A whale could not buy it because it wouldn't stay there very long because it's such a great deal at like 20, right? But it's probably not going to happen. And if it did happen, well, I'd be surprised. Okay. But everything depends on what's going on with the S&P 500. So we're going to see what will happen this week. Like if we go to weekly candle, I think that's a good way to look at it at first. Like we have seen like very bullish candles. Now, these are bullish candles because you can see that it pushes up and the week closes above this line. So right now we're back below this line, but is it going to push back up? And as soon as we get above the minus 10%, we're going to now test the bull market support band. And then if we break through that, then we're back in business, baby, right? We're back in like business because now we might want to see a bounce on that. Like, let's say, just so we're clear here, it goes up, right? It bounces off this, breaks the market like support band here and gets a bounce off of it and then keeps going up. Everything's back in like business and we're going to stay here for months and months. So, you know, you could either buy Bitcoin and if you wanted to use the Stoke RSI to make money, you could even switch this to like 1 month, right? And just wait until this is at the top. And even on the 1 month, if you did that, look how low it is. Now you're not going to sell it very like often. You buy it, you start accumulating here, and then when it starts going up, you sell there. Now, this may not seem like a lot of like money, but if you just do this, you can see that 351% And then, well, we haven't been here. We have not been here since on the monthly, right? Since the last date at the bottom was 2019. Okay. So that's something for you guys to think about. Think about that. We have not been on the monthly candles in Stoke RSI. We have not been at the bottom where we are right now since 2019. Okay. And so I'm not saying we'll get a big pump like this, right? I mean, it's possible. It's possible you do a 15x, but I do think that if you hold it long enough, you could certainly do a 3x or 4x. I think that's like possible. If you use the monthly candle and you sell on the top, you can't go wrong. Okay. You can only make like money. Don't trust the news. I want to talk about the news very quickly, and I'll show you one more chart. In fact, let me show you this chart first, and I'll come back to my point. And that's the chart right here. And I mentioned this yesterday, the difference between a correction and a bear market. I'll come back to that. But what I want to say is that, like, you can't believe the news, because the news are constantly telling you everything's going to crash. And like, you know, like YouTube's telling you that, the news is like telling you that. And the reason they're telling you that is because that's what sells, right? Like it's clickbait, and you got to ignore that stuff long enough. And you follow the strategies that you have, whether it's your strategies or somebody else. But, you know, do your own like research. But for me, I don't care what the news says. I'm going to buy, right? Like, and I'm going to have a strategy in case I'm wrong, of course, because you always want to question both sides. What if I'm wrong, right? What if my strategy is wrong? Okay, then no problem. I can cover the worst case like scenario. So that's very important to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've talked about this before. So much of this is hinging on what you think long-term about Bitcoin. If you think this is the final days of Bitcoin and that it will once soon be obsolete, then this is really risky. But if you think Bitcoin's here to stay, then this is a fantastic time to buy. Of course, this isn't financial advice. You got to do your own due diligence. We're just telling you what we are thinking for ourselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's not going to go away. And if you want to know why, you should watch a guy named called Michael Saylor. I think he makes the best argument why money is the best asset that you can hold right now, better than like money, because you don't want to, you know, we all know about inflation with the US dollar. And, you know, his probably favorite analogy is that, you know, you're owning Bitcoin is like owning a piece of property in New York. It's only going to go up with time, right? So on like Broadway or like something like that. So you definitely you need to understand the fundamental value. What I'm showing you now is technical analysis, but I really believe that Bitcoin by 2030 will either be 500,000 or $1 million per Bitcoin. And the only question is, how many Bitcoin am I going to own by 2030? So everybody who's in crypto, who understands this game, we're all shooting for 2030, and we want to own as much Bitcoin as possible. Not as much US dollars like possible, but as much Bitcoin as like possible. And the way you do that is that you buy the dips, okay? And you sell on the top, and then you buy the next dip and sell at the top. That's why you want to subscribe to this like channel. Oh yeah, okay. So I've already covered that. So the last thing I want to cover with you before we finish today is this chart right here. And so you need to understand the difference between a correction and a bear market. A correction is -10 to -20%. The average correction is 13.7. And there's only 24 correction in the last 47 years. Now think about that. We're looking at the span of 47 years. Do you think the news are going to tell you this? And do you think the news is going to tell you there's a correction once every 2 years? And by the way, we just had a bear market in 2020 when we had the COVID crash, which was pretty big, right? I think it was -37. Don't quote me on that. But here's my point. There's a difference between a correction and a bear market, because a bear market is -20% or more. And the average bear market is 32.5%. But here's the thing. There's only been 5 bear markets in 47 years, and it only happens once every 9 years. And we just had one in February 2020, actually March of 2020, right? When we had the COVID crash. So anyone who's trying to like convince me that we're going to have another crash right now, it just doesn't follow logic. Now, I could be wrong. I admit that. I've certainly been wrong in the past, but it doesn't, like, I'm very logical. Like if you tell me it's once every 9 years and it's only been 2 years, and you're telling me that a correction happens once every 2 years, why would I think this is a bear market? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Does that make sense to you, James?
No, not at all. And sometimes what we forget is that really what this is measuring is human behavior. That's what it is. It's not some magical aliens from outer space came in and made this crash. I mean, this is human behavior and how it cycles.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back one last time. So as we all know, Bitcoin follows the S&P 500, right? So the S&P 500 from the peak has dropped right now at the lowest point, 14.55%. Now, if you go back to my chart, let me show you one more time, is if you go back, that means we're experiencing a correction, not a crash. Okay, it says right here, -10 to -20, right? So it's a correction, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a bear market. So stop saying it's a bear market. That's not right. According to What I'm showing you now, we are not in a bear market. So why do people keep saying that? It's annoying. We are in a correction. Now, if we're going to go below minus 20%, then we would be entering a bear market. And it says right there. So now in that case, Bitcoin will probably go to 20,000. Then that would make sense. But we are not in a bear market. And chances are we're not going to go in a bear market. Now, again, this is, based on what I've shown you, based on the evidence that I've shown you. So what really kind of peeves me here is that everybody is calling this a bear market. It's not a bear market. It's a correction. And it has not went below 20%. Until that happens, nobody should be calling this a bear market. And if it's not a bear market and it's a correction, then here's a question for you. Should you buy the dip right now? If it's only going to be a correction, should you buy the dip? Yes or no? I'll let you decide, but I'll tell you one thing. I'm buying the dip. And if I'm wrong, I've got 20% cash to still buy the $20,000 Bitcoin, which I doubt it's going to go down there. I give it a 20% odd, no way. So that's what I've got for you guys.
Fantastic. Excellent analysis again. Again, this is like the garage sale. Are we in the morning of the garage sale or the noon, or is this the end of the garage sale? Those things no one can predict, but regardless.
And they're selling Rolex at the garage sale.
Exactly.
You're at a garage sale right now selling Rolex, gold Rolex. Okay, I actually have one, and they're selling it for like 1/10 of the price.
Exactly. And you might get a little better deal if you wait, a few more hours. At the same time, maybe it won't be there anymore. So though, there's always that risk of not taking action.
That's right. And that's a good point, because we're not saying we've reached the bottom yet. What we're saying is that it's not a bear market. So there's still a little bit more room to go down in this correction. That's possible. But so that's why you want to DCA as it goes down. Now, if it's a bear market, keep 20% cash reserve in case, right? Because we know in that case, yes, Bitcoin will go down to 20,000. So that'll be the worst case for Bitcoin.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, Michael, thanks for that analysis today. And again, if you like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment. We always love to hear from you. We read all the comments. And again, this is James and Michael from the Crypto Guys. Keep trading and trade from a beautiful state.
Bye for now.